You could hear a pin drop. Seriously. The fork was halfway to my mouth, loaded with stuffing, when my mom looked across the Thanksgiving table and asked the question I had been dreading for 2 years. My sister, the golden child, was glowing, mostly because she just had a $50,000 wedding that my parents mortgaged their house for. Mom smiled that sugary sweet, toxic smile and said, "Jessica's wedding was just perfect. When's yours happening?" I put the fork down, looked her dead in the eye, and dropped the nuclear bomb. "I had mine 2 years ago. You just weren't invited." The silence was louder than the screaming that followed. Before we get into the absolute chaos that ensued, drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how global this community is. Now, let's get into the tea. Let's rewind a bit. I met Mark 3 years ago at a coffee shop. It sounds cliché, I know, but he spilled an iced latte on my laptop, and he was so horrified that he insisted on buying me a new one right then and there. We started talking, and for the first time in my life, I felt seen. Not as a sister, not as a daughter, but as me. 6 months into dating, I brought him home for a quick lunch. Just 1 hour. It was a disaster. My mom spent the entire time asking him invasive questions about his salary and making backhanded compliments about my appearance. "Oh, Mark, you must really like smart girls because she certainly didn't get the looks in the family." Mark stayed polite, but as soon as we got in the car, he looked at me and said, "I love you, but I will never let that energy into our home." That was the moment I knew he was the one. He protected me. A year later, he proposed. It wasn't a big public spectacle like Jessica's proposal, which was live-streamed to Facebook. It was just us, in our pajamas, eating takeout pizza. It was perfect. But then came the dread. I knew the protocol. I was supposed to call Mom, scream with excitement, and let the planning takeover begin. I pictured it vividly. Mom criticizing my ring, Mom demanding I invite relatives I haven't seen in 10 years, Mom making me wear a dress I hated. I felt my chest tighten. I didn't want a wedding. I wanted a marriage. I wanted peace. Mark saw me spiraling and asked, "Do we have to tell them right now?" That question changed everything. We realized we didn't owe them our happiness. We didn't owe them access to our lives, especially when they had never respected my boundaries before. We decided right then that we were going to do this our way. No drama, no debt, and absolutely no narcissistic input. But keeping a fiancé secret while living in the same city as your family? That requires military-level stealth. We planned the wedding in 3 weeks. We didn't want a venue that cost a year's salary. We booked a tiny, stunning cabin in the Pacific Northwest, right on the edge of a lake. It was just us, an officiant, and a photographer we found on Instagram who specialized in elopements. I remember buying my dress off the rack for $200. It was simple, elegant, and exactly what I wanted. There was no fitting drama, no body shaming from my mother, no bridesmaids complaining about the color. The day of the ceremony, I turned my phone off. That was the most liberating feeling in the world. No texts demanding where I was. No guilt trips. Just the sound of the wind in the trees and the man I loved standing in front of me. We wrote our own vows. I promised to protect our peace, and he promised to always be my safe space. It's funny, I was scrolling through YouTube the other day and saw a video titled, "I uninvited my entire family to my wedding," and I clicked it so fast. Listening to that story, I realized I wasn't alone. The person in that video went through the drama of uninviting toxic people, dealing with the fallout, and the security at the door. And while that was brave, I realized I had done something even more extreme. I never gave them the chance to be uninvited because they never knew the door existed. The peace I felt that day was addictive. We spent our honeymoon weekend hiking and drinking wine by the fire. When we came back to reality, we made a pact. We would tell them. Eventually. But the longer we waited, the more peaceful my life became. Eventually, turned into months, and months turned into 2 years. I wore my ring on a chain around my neck under my shirt whenever I visited my parents. I changed Mark's contact name in my phone. I lived a double life, and honestly, it was the happiest I had ever been. But secrets like this have a way of festering if you don't let them out, and Thanksgiving was the boiling point. Fast forward to the present. Thanksgiving dinner. The air was thick with the smell of roasted turkey and passive aggression. My dad was silently eating, trying to disappear into the tablecloth. Jessica was scrolling through her wedding photos on an iPad, forcing everyone to look at them for the 100th time. "Look at the flowers," Jessica sighed. "They were so worth the $4,000, right, Mom?" "Absolutely," Mom beamed, pouring herself more wine. "It was the event of the season. Everyone is still talking about it. I was just trying to eat my potatoes and get out of there." I had Mark waiting in the car a block away because I told them he was working a holiday shift. I just needed to survive dessert. Then, the conversation shifted. Mom turned to me. Her eyes had that glint, the one that meant she was ready to start digging. "So," she started, "Jessica is settled. She's a wife now. It's such a beautiful step in a woman's life." She paused for effect. "When are you going to stop playing around with that?" "What's his name?" "Mark." "And get serious. You're not getting any younger." Jessica chimed in, laughing. "Yeah, seriously. You've been dating forever. Does he even want to marry you? Or is he just stringing you along?" My blood boiled. They weren't just insulting me. They were insulting my husband. They were insulting the man who had held me while I cried about their abuse. The man who was currently sitting in a freezing car waiting for me because I was too afraid to bring him inside. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice steady, "he's not stringing me along." "Well, until there's a ring on your finger, it's just a hobby, dear," Mom said dismissively. "I just want you to have what Jessica has. A real wedding. A real commitment." That was it. The dam broke. I reached under my sweater, pulled out the chain with my wedding ring on it, unclasped it, and slid the ring onto my finger right there at the table. "I don't need a wedding like Jessica's," I said, my voice cutting through the room. "Because I'm already married. We eloped 2 years ago. And it was the best day of my life specifically because none of you were there." The reaction was delayed, like thunder after lightning. First, there was total confusion. My dad stopped chewing. Jessica dropped her fork. My mom just stared at the ring on my finger, her face turning a shade of purple I'd never seen before. "What did you say?" Mom whispered. "I said I'm married. Mark is my husband. We own a house together. We are happy. And I kept it from you because I knew you would make it about yourself." Chaos. Absolute chaos. Jessica started crying immediately. Not because she was happy for me, but because the attention was off her. "You ruined my first Thanksgiving as a wife," she wailed. Mom stood up, slamming her hands on the table. "How dare you? How dare you rob me of this? I am your mother. I have a right to be at my daughter's wedding." "You don't have rights to my life," I shot back, standing up too. "You lost that right when you spent my entire childhood making me feel like I wasn't enough. I didn't want a wedding where you criticized the food or compared me to Jessica. I wanted a marriage." "You are selfish," Mom screamed. "You are a deceitful, ungrateful brat. Is he poor? Is that it? Is he embarrassed of us?" I laughed. I actually laughed. "Mark makes 3 times what Jessica's husband makes. We aren't in debt. We didn't need your money, and we didn't need your approval. And honestly, seeing how you're reacting right now just confirms that I made the right choice." I grabbed my purse. "I'm leaving. Mark is outside. And unlike this family, he actually loves me unconditionally." I walked to the door, my heart pounding out of my chest. I could hear my mom screaming my name, demanding I come back, demanding I explain myself, demanding I apologize. But I didn't turn around. I walked out into the crisp autumn air and saw Mark's car idling down the street. I got in, and the silence inside the car was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. He looked at me, saw the adrenaline shaking my hands, and just reached over and held my hand. "Did you do it?" he asked softly. "I did," I said, letting out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 2 years. "It's over." We drove home, and my phone blew up. Texts from Mom calling me a traitor. Texts from Jessica calling me a spotlight stealer. Texts from flying monkey relatives I hadn't spoken to in years telling me I broke my mother's heart. I blocked them. One by one. Block. 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 It's been 3 days since Thanksgiving. I haven't spoken to them. I feel a little bit of guilt. That's the conditioning talking. But mostly, I feel free. I realized that blood doesn't make you family. Behavior does. I chose my family when I married Mark. They wanted a wedding. I have a marriage. They wanted control. I chose freedom. And if anyone out there is wondering if they should invite their toxic family to their big day just because of tradition, take it from me. The peace of mind is worth more than any gift they could give you. If you've ever had to cut off toxic family members or keep a massive secret to protect your peace, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone in this. Make sure you subscribe to Older Says True for more stories like this. I'll see you in the next one. Stay true.